Hello, I'm your host Jim McLean. Welcome to the latest episode of the BanterFlix movie review show here on NVTV. Let's see what movies we'll be looking at tonight. It's the first special of the series as we showcase some of the outdoor film screenings happening at Belfast City Hall this summer as part of the Belfast 1 Summer Days. So that's what we've lined up for you this week. It's the first special of the series and I need someone special with me in the studio. So we have our master storyteller. He's starting to hate that title, but he's got it, so he's going to keep it. So it's our very own Darren Vincent. Hello to you, Darren.
Hi Jim, thanks for having me on.
Darren, how have you been keeping this week? Anything exciting going on in your life before we get talking about all things cinematic?
No, all good with me. Happy enough that it's good to see the sun out in Belfast for a change. We're now into the summer months and really looking forward to seeing what's ahead. Although, as we record, it started to rain, so let's hope it goes back to sunny days again. Well,
fingers crossed. The sun may be out, but that doesn't mean we can't sit and talk about movies. We're going to be talking about outdoor film screenings this week as part of the special, where we look at some of the events that are happening at Belfast 1 for their Summer Days programme. But it might be a special, but we still have to fit in some room for some movie news. So Darren, what has caught your attention in the world of cinema this week?
Well, we've recently heard the news that Joker 2 has been announced. It will be a musical directed by Todd Phillips and will star Lady Gaga in an unconfirmed role, although the rumour is she's going to play Harley Quinn. Initially when I heard this I thought, I don't really know if that's going to work as a musical, but the more I thought about it in sort of days and a week now since it was announced, I've started thinking this might work. And I'm sort of looking forward to see what they come up with.
I don't know how I feel about this. I'm starting to feel very much like I did a few years ago when I moaned and moaned on this TV show, on the podcast, and just to anybody who would listen about suffering comic book fatigue. And I don't know, I mean, I liked Joker at the time, but the more distance I take from that film, the more I just find myself, I want to watch Martin Scorsese's King of Comedy. Instead, it's a better film, and Joker clings to that source material like a wet blanket, as to Taxi Driver. But I can be a hypocrite at times, and I'm kind of intrigued by the idea of the musical aspect of the film. Now, I don't know whether this will be a full-blown musical or it will have a musical numbers. That would make sense to have Lady Gaga in there. But what do you think of her potentially being cast as Harley Quinn? I think we've just got used now to Margot Robbie, whether it's been in good films or bad films. We're just used to her now being Harley Quinn. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great casting. She's sort of got that bit of, I'm going to say, a mean streak, a bit of sort of street smarts to her as well. And it's whether or not that comes across on screen. But, you know, as you say, it could be musical pieces. It could be, you know, a different side of Harley Quinn that we maybe have seen in, you know, like Birds of Prey, but more of the sort of fantasies, more of the sort of teenage girl element to it almost in a way. But it'll be interesting to see. And like you, I was a bit, you know, that's not going to work. But, you know, with Hollywood these days, I just think, you know what, nothing's surprising me anymore. We'll see.
The certain fact we have to look at, the amount of money that Joker made at the box office meant that a sequel was inevitable. And I don't think it needed a sequel. I think it was a great one and done. It tried to do something different within the cinematic universe. Some people liked it, some people didn't. I sit on the fence. I liked it at the time. I really enjoyed it when I was caught up in the moment. I remember seeing it at the Venice Film Festival, not to kind of come across as all kind of OTT, but I remember watching the Venice Film Festival where it got its world premiere and getting caught up in that kind of excitement about it, that this was something different. But when I rewatched it, and I've watched it a couple of times, it's like, it's okay, it's all right. Mm-hmm. Give me Jack Nicholson as the Joker any day over it. But, you know, I guess we have to wait and see. A couple of things I know that has caught my attention. We've had the trailer for Netflix's Matilda. Now, this is based on the musical stage play that's been in London and has went to Broadway, where we have Emma Thompson playing the terrifying Mrs. Trunchbull. I'm intrigued by that. I mean, have you seen this trailer, Darren? Has anything like this? Because we're talking about musicals. You're looking at me with a bit of panic, so I'm thinking maybe you haven't seen this.
I haven't seen the trailer, no, but I know that there's been a trend recently with streaming services to rely on musicals. We have Hamilton on Disney Plus. We have West Side Story recently last year. You know, it was up for a few Oscars, but you know, is it a ploy by these streaming services that they want to produce musicals and films that are just watched over and over and over again, keeping their streaming numbers high? And they're thinking, you know, we need to invest in more musical content, more ways of making more money. And we can also, you know, put the soundtrack on Spotify as well and make a fortune off that too. But yeah, I don't know, I haven't seen the trailer for this, but I love Matilda the film, so I think there will be a bunch of fans that are maybe a bit protective over that and don't want it to be, you know, ruin their image of it. But as you say, the stage show has been going for years and it's very popular, so hopefully it does it justice.
I guess this is this film's get out of jail card, because it's not a straight adaptation of the book, although our very own Danny DeVito, who's on me here today, his version of the film, it did take liberties with the book as well. This is an adaptation, as you say, of the musical, so I guess it frees itself from the shackles of an obvious comparison to the film. I'm intrigued by it. I have a soft spot for musicals. I will watch it. It's on Netflix. I don't have to leave my home to go see it. I don't know. It's just one of those things, like you, I love the original film as well, and I love the book. I do love Roald Dahl. The last thing that has caught my attention is the fact that Chris Evans has said he doesn't want to return to the role of Captain America, although I guess if Disney throw a lot of money at that man, you know, Steve Rogers is a hero of mine, you know, I do love him as an actor, but he has said he's not going to come back. But he has said, though, he would be up for returning to the role of the Human Torch in the Fantastic Four. We've got that rebooted. We have John Krasinski going to be directing and starring. You know I'm the person talking about comic book fatigue. You excited by this? Would you like to see Chris Evans coming back to that role?
I don't know. The first I heard of that was today, and I thought, you know, do they really need to cast him again and just act like it hasn't happened? Will the novelty wear off? Or, you know, who else would play that role too? And bring it in. Yes, John Krasinski is probably in a great position to direct and probably knows, is almost destined for that role. And he probably knows the dynamic needed and thought, you know what, if Chris Evans is never going to be topped, why not just bring him back again? It's like Ronaldo coming back to Man United. If you can't replace him, just buy him again and hope he's still, you know, the same again. But no, that'd be good. I'd like to see Danny DeVito in the Fantastic Four, maybe his thing or something like that. But
there we go. You heard it here first. And you talk about Ronaldo coming back to Man United. Look how well that worked out. But let's not go down. This is not a football show. This is a movie show. And as we said, this is an episode we're looking at some of the events that are happening as part of the Belfast One Summer Days season. A lot of those are events run by the Belfast Film Festival, outdoor film screenings at the City Hall. They're going to be taking place on the 16th and 17th of July. There's a couple of films each day, and we can't talk about all of them. We've picked, between the two of us, we've picked 3 films we wanted to showcase, and I think we will kick things off. The first film, Darren, you've picked, and that is Steven Spielberg's cinematic classic, E.T.
He's lost. He's alone. And he's 3 million light years from home. Experience the mystery.
Wait, what is it? I don't know. Something scary.
The wonder.
What's happening?
The call.
E.T. Phone home.
That started it all.
So that's a look at Steven Spielberg's E.T., the extraterrestrial. That's going to be screening on the 16th of July at Belfast City Hall. We will be talking about this in detail at the end. But Darren, why have you picked this film in particular?
Just when I seen the lineup and thought E.T., there's a film that really sort of struck a chord with me. It's one of those films that I'll always remember, sort of like any of the big Spielberg films, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List. You'll always remember when you watch those films. And for me, it was I was maybe 5 years old, and we were going to Florida, and I watched it sort of in advance of going to the E.T. extraterrestrial ride at Universal Studios, and I think that's always, you know, I've always remembered that this time of year. Anytime people are saying they go to Florida, I always think of E.T., which is really random and weird. But I have to say, it's a film that still holds up for me. There's a great narrative to it. It's one of those films that's, you know, when you're younger, you're watching it thinking it's a great friendship movie, but as you get older, you start to realize it's more about family and the role that E.T. plays in Elliot's life, filling a void that his maybe father wasn't there for. And it's one of those great films where there is really no villain or any evilness to it. It's just, you know, it's a wholesome story about an alien trying to get back home. The government is getting obviously concerned, thinking, you know, there's an alien. We don't know what, we need to do tests on it before, and they're trying to get their end of it too. But I think it just has a great legacy that, you know, it's one of those true sort of cinematic masterpieces that even John Williams' score, anytime you hear that score, you think of E.T., and just the real, you know, nostalgia factor, which is sort of echoing now. We see the success of Stranger Things, which relies heavily on the tropes from E.T. too. So I seen advertised at the film festival and thought that would be great to go see, especially now, you know, to go see it with a younger audience or take your kids to it, you know, let them witness it for the first time. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I love E.T. I'm not going to lie about it. And there's a lot of things, well, pretty much everything you've said, Darren, I agree with. This is a film that's filled with heart. You know, Steven Spielberg has talked about this being a very personal film for him, being a film that he just unashamedly opened his heart up to the world, and we all enjoyed watching it. And it's a film, like you said, it is a film that every time I rewatch, I find myself getting sucked in, and it could be a case of I could be tuning into the film if it's on TV and it's been on for 15 minutes, if it's on for half an hour, if it's been on for 50 minutes, I will find myself watching to the end. The thing I always think of E.T. when I think of the film is the score, as you've alluded to. That John Williams score is just iconic. It's simple in its execution, but that's some of the best pieces of John Williams, and the fact that it's not over the top. Yes, it's got a big booming orchestra, but in terms of the actual melody, it's so simple. It's beautiful. I do love that score. But I want to come back to, why do you think a film like E.T. has such a timeless quality? And you, as you've mentioned, you've kind of preempted a lot of the questions I'm going to ask you about this film, in the sense that we see that nostalgia factor. We see that it's very much set a blueprint for those type of films. But why do you think E.T. has had the influence and longevity that it has?
Well, as you said, it is filled with heart. When you think of E.T., you think of that sort of friendship bond and family bond that they're sort of gathering around and helping E.T. In this world. And I was doing a bit of research for the show. Someone described it as almost like a reverse Wizard of Oz type situation. So someone, you know, is not going to a sort of spectacular, strange place. It's actually an amazing and sort of magical person coming into our normal world, and that sort of story holds up. You know, you're always going to feel a little bit out of place in certain situations to your life, and you know, I think you always go back to that sort of nostalgia and your friendships as a child and think, you know, they were some of the best times of anyone's life, and you think back and go, right, that's when I was watching E.T. or that's when I was a child, and it really just gives you really nice warm feelings around all that. And the score too really just takes you back. As soon as you hear the first sort of 2 bars of it, you think of E.T. and you think of how you felt when you watched that film.
Yeah, well, I know, like BanterFlix, over the years we have availed ourselves of E.T.'s success. We have used that iconic image of E.T. going over the moon, but we've replaced it with the 2 yellow cranes, Samson and Goliath here. It's just an iconic film. It's simple, it wears its heart on its sleeve. It's a warm hug of a movie. So yes, that is definitely a thumbs up for us. If you've never seen E.T., this is your chance to see it. It's free, tickets are free, but you just have to book. We will come back to this at the very end of the show. But let's move on to the next film we're looking at, and that's Richard Donner's The Goonies.
Hey, Mike found the map!
One-Eyed Willie. My dad told me all about him. See, One-Eyed Willie stole treasure once, and then he got into this cave, and he's been there ever since, trapped. You guys, just what if this map could lead to One-Eyed Willie's rich stuff?
I want to go home.
Don't say that! Goonies never say die!
So that's a look at Richard Donner's The Goonies, 1985. Darren, I'm going to get crucified for this. I am not as big a fan of The Goonies as some within the BanterFlix ranks. I know our very own Therese Ray, if she was here, would be championing this film, talking about how great it is and talking about that it's on a par with E.T. I like it, I just don't love it. It's not a film I hold a candle to. Maybe it's because I didn't see it when I was younger. I don't know how I managed to miss it. I just did. I watched E.T. at the right age. The Goonies, it just didn't hit me. I think by the time I was old enough, I was watching stuff like The Lost Boys, which is very similar to The Goonies. But where do you weigh in? Is the Goonies a film that holds a special place in your heart? I
have to agree with you, Jim. I'm the same. I don't know if it's because I missed it in my childhood or if maybe my parents wouldn't let me watch it. I don't know. I actually remember going to a friend of mine to watch it one night. He rented it from Extravision and stuck it on. I remember looking at it going, you brought me round to watch this. You're wasting my evening. I'm 6 years old. I have better things to do with my time, and it just didn't capture me. And I've watched it a couple of times since, as a sort of in my teenage years and recently, and I still, I can see the formula is there, much like E.T. It's got a sort of strong, sort of child actor base there. They all seem to have their lines and their moments, but the film just kind of falls a bit. Let's just throw everything at it and see what works. And you expect something a bit better from Donner, and it's a Christopher Columbus script, so you expect that sort of family tie to it or a bit of heart to it. But I think it's more style and not a lot of substance. Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't say it doesn't have heart. I don't think it's not like that. I think it's just a sense, I don't look at this film with the rose-tinted glasses as some people do. And I will never criticize anybody for that, because I know there are films I look at that are untouchable in my eyes. You've mentioned Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park, there's a film that just hit me right at the right time. It was all about the big screen experience. It was dinosaurs, and it was Sam Neill and Jeff Goldblum. What's not to like about that lineup? And here's a film I could imagine if I had been of the age watching this, the idea of the perfect summer, which is just a great blueprint for a lot of films. The idea of, as I say, the perfect summer. We have kids on an adventure. They're all on the lookout for the gold of One-Eyed Willie. Let's not go, we're all adults here. Let's not go down the innuendo bingo. We have, of course, Sloth. Hey, you guys. Sorry, I can't resist it. But there is a charm to it. And again, like we talked about E.T., this is another one of those films that has set a blueprint. It's been replicated, it's been copied. We take that. So I know it's kind of an obvious question, but why do you think that's the case? Why do you think, for you anyway, Darren, that's the case? Because we see this in stuff like Ready Player One. You could pretty much look at the plot and say, you just borrowed quite heavily from the Goonies. Yeah. I just don't know. I remember watching it the last time, I think it was a couple of years ago, just maybe when lockdown was starting out, and I was losing interest in it very early on. I think once they started exploring, maybe it was it was jumping the shark. There was plot devices thrown in. There was gadgets for specific things that were helping them out of certain situations. And I just thought, I find this it's not as believable for me as, I know E.T. is a completely unbelievable story, but E.T. was more believable than the Goonies was. But I sort of think, you mentioned about Jurassic Park, and, there has been sequels to that, and there has, they've sort of rehashed it and redone it over again. But I don't think there's the need for that with the Goonies. They're not gonna, I know the cast reunited recently, and there was a bit of press about that, but I don't think they would ever, develop that into a legacy. There's not a strong bond, or not a strong sort of need for that. I did see they are going to do a Disney Plus series about a film school, replicating it. And I think, is that a roundabout way of just trying to get a remake out of it? I don't know, but I just didn't feel, I wasn't grabbed by it at all. Okay, well, I know the late great Richard Donner is a filmmaker I have a lot of love for, Superman, Lethal Weapon, all this stuff. You've talked about Chris Columbus, you've talked about Richard Donner, with Steven Spielberg. There's three big heavyweights of cinema. I know they had pushed for a sequel, whether it was on the small screen or on the big screen, for quite some time. And when you look at the cast, quite a few of those cast members have went on to bigger and better things. We have Josh Brolin, of course, probably the most famous, Sean Astin, and I would not be surprised still if a sequel came about. But we might not be the biggest fans of the film. What do you think of the idea of getting to see that type of film? If you're parents, if you've got younger kids, this might just be the perfect way to introduce this film to a younger audience, to see if they like it. Although you'll be surprised, there's a bit of smoking, there's a bit of drinking going on quite early on in the film that surprised me when I rewatched it. Do you think there's a good way, an event like this at the City Hall, free screening, free tickets, to see this type of film as a family?
Yeah, I think it would be good in that sense, because you're going to be there with adult fans of the film, and there's going to be a buzz about it, and they're going to be quoting lines and things that they remember, and you'll get sucked in with that if you haven't seen it before. So, don't listen to my negativity about it. Just, get a free ticket and go check it out.
Our collective negativity. We're not being negative. We've talked more negatively about films in this series over the years. But look, that's enough talk about the Goonies. I think we will talk about a film that's closer to home. It's closing this year's event, and that, of course, is Sir Kenneth Branagh's Oscar-winning Belfast.
Kids the same age as ours are getting killed. We can give these boys a better chance than we ever had.
Nothing else but Belfast.
Go now. Don't look back.
So that's a look at Belfast. It is going to be closing the event at Belfast City Hall on the 17th of July. This is closing the weekend on the 16th and 17th of July. I guess here in Northern Ireland we're a wee bit predisposed to like Sir Ken's film. And I want to ask, before we even get into sharing your thoughts on the film, did you see this on the big screen? Did you see this on the small screen? Where did you find Sir Ken's Belfast?
We went to the big screen to see it now. As you know me, I've recently moved out of Belfast. I live in Craigavon, so I got to see it with an audience that isn't from Belfast. So not a foreign audience, it's only 20 miles up the road, but a completely different audience to maybe someone, if I went to see it in the Strand Cinema in East Belfast with people who have lived in East Belfast for, 40, 50 years. So it was a different audience, but the cinema was packed out and it was great to see. And, as I said there about the Goonies, if you're going to go down with sort of similar fans, you're going to get that buzz of people from Belfast watching the film and, that nostalgia factor playing into it. Now, the film is what it is. It's a memoir. It's a sort of semi-autobiographical piece by Kenneth Branagh, but you're watching it with a bit of with your rose-tinted glasses on. You're trying to ignore what it could have been, and just sit down and just enjoy the spirit that he's trying to portray through the film.
Yeah, look, I like this film a lot. I still get surprised it took home Best Screenplay at the Academy Awards. I still think Licorice Pizza would have been more deserving of that. That is not me being harsh in the film, it's not being negative. I just think Licorice Pizza as a screenplay is much better than this. But I love, and we've talked a lot about this through this episode, I love the heart behind Belfast, the idea behind it, the idea that Sir Kenneth wanted to showcase his Belfast and his memories. I think I read somewhere that this was a screenplay that was burning a hole in his head and had to get out, and through the pandemic he had the opportunity to make it happen. It is a little bit like walking through treacle at times. I accept that. And yeah, I do not know where Judi Dench has come from. I don't know where that accent is in that film, but it's still Judi Dench, given that performance that we know from Judi Dench, where we will pretty much watch her read the phone book. Where this film wins, hands down, yes, we've got Jude Hill, who's great as Buddy, but we have a performance I just think deserved an Oscar from Ciarán Hinds as Granda. I mean, anything at all, if you haven't seen Belfast, and if you go and you watch it and you don't like it, I can't imagine anybody not coming away and enjoying Ciarán Hinds' performance from that film. Was that the same for you?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. He's got that sort of Belfast spirit, you know, very down to earth, you know, and he has a bit of crack, a bit of humour about him too. And you know, that's one of the standout performances in that film, and he does show that quite well. You can tell maybe Kenneth had a person in his life like that, and he's maybe, you know, drawn from that inspiration and put it in his film. And you know, he's really the heart that drives the film, apart from Buddy. You know, Buddy is, you know, how we see the plot develop, and we see it sort of through his lens, but really the heart beating behind it is his granda.
Yeah, I definitely would recommend seeking it out. Of the 3 films we've looked at tonight, and we will throw up on the screen the full listings of all the films, because I know there's Encanto as well. I know we don't talk about Bruno, but a lot of people seem to have talked about Bruno, and a lot of people seem to love Bruno, so that's going to be on. That's going to draw a huge crowd. I just don't know if I'm prepared to have an audience react the way I inevitably think they will react during that film. But there's a couple of other films I know. Sing 2, I know Peter Rabbit 2 is screening. There's a few other we'll throw up on the screen shortly. But of the 3 films specifically we've talked about tonight on this week's special, what would you recommend our viewers seek out? I get a sense I know where you're going to go in this, but...
Well, yeah, it's closely tied. I'm going to have to say E.T. because for my own heart, it's a film I would never turn down an opportunity to go see it, especially on a big screen in a, you know, outdoor theatre or an outdoor event where there's other fans, you know, sharing those emotions too. Belfast very close seconds, not because, you know, on paper, you know, it would be close on paper, but it's just because, you know, are you ever going to get a chance to watch Belfast in Belfast City Centre at City Hall as part of a film festival with people who are sharing that experience too? So, you know, there's a great selection there. If you want to go see a musical, it will be good too, because there'll be hundreds of singing fans, singing children. If you can put up with that, then that's grand. Look,
you've almost sold me, but I was going to say E.T. It was, you know, I was going to be 2 for 2, but now with all that kind of emotion and all that kind of impassioned talk about Belfast, you've sold me on going to see that. That would be my pick. I have mentioned, I know we didn't talk about this week, Mamma Mia is going to be screening. It's closing the event on the 16th, Saturday. That will be an absolutely fab night, just to hear that foghorn of a voice of Pierce Brosnan singing out during Mamma Mia. That would be worth the night on its own. These are, of course, outdoor screenings, so they're, you know, dress up warm. You know, the weather in Belfast, as you've alluded to at the start of this show, Darren, we can have sweltering weather, and then the next minute we can have a good few hours of rain. They are outdoors, so dress accordingly. Bring yourself a picnic, enjoy the evening. They're free events. The tickets have went on sale today, and if you get an opportunity, get onto the Belfast Film Festival's website and get your ticket. So yes, it was going to be, coming back to my original question, was going to be a 2 for 2. I was going to agree with you to say that E.T. would be the must-see watch from this week's show, but you sold me in Belfast, so I'm going to split the vote and go for Belfast. So look, that is us. We're out of time. I've had fun talking about this, our first special of the series. It won't be our last. So all that's left for me to do now is thank my guests. So thank you very much, Darren.
Thanks, Jim.
And thanks very much for watching at home. We'll be back next week with another episode. But for now, until then, goodbye.